Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. In this video, we're going to react to the most scenic drives in the US. So the US, huge country, lots of different environments. It's got deserts, it's got mountains, it's got canyons, dunes, all that kind of stuff. But if you were just going to go on like a massive long road trip, but you wanted to, be in the most beautiful environments. You didn't want to just do Route 66, which I'm sure has a lot of scenic portions to it. If you wanted to do like the top 10 best sort of scenic road trips, what would they be? And who else other than the Geography King, like best sort of channel for this sort of topic on YouTube, in my opinion. Like, where would he go? And because he's someone who's been, I think he said he's been to all 50 states. Like he's seen a lot of the country, so I'm sure he's picked some gems.
Howdy, it's Kyle talking about the 10 most scenic drives in the US. I've been fortunate enough to drive around the country many times and I've seen some really beautiful drives. In this video, I want to talk about the 10 that I believe are the most beautiful in my opinion. This is not going to be a countdown, just an overview of the drives, although I will save my personal favorite one for the very end. And all of the footage and images you're going to see are taken from the side of the road or very nearby. You won't have to stop and get out of the car, hike for a couple of miles to get to some of these spots, or drive down some weird funky dirt road to get to them.
That's useful because, someone like me who wouldn't know where to go really, I'd probably get lost if I had to hike a few miles. It'd be nice just to have it there. You could just look out the window and see.
And also,
it.
I have not been to either Alaska or Hawaii, and although I'm sure there are some very beautiful drives in those states, I won't be including them because I haven't actually done them. So let's take a look at the 10 most beautiful drives in the contiguous US. I want to start by talking about the Oregon coast. The whole coast is very nice, but I wanted to focus on the parts between Lincoln City and Brookings. This follows US Highway 101, and for most of the stretch you're right along the coast. There are a few spots where you go a little bit inland. But one thing that is really great about Oregon is that all of the beaches are public. There's public access all along the way, and there's no big development going up and down the coast. There are no big cities. In fact, the biggest towns are under 10,000 people. There is a part where you go inland a little bit around Coos Bay, which is the big city in the area with about 15,000 people. But all of the coastal towns have less than 10,000. Effectively, the entire Oregon coast is one big state park, and there are all kinds of spots where you can stop and get out to the beach. It's just really nice to see one long stretch of coastline in the US that isn't completely developed with giant hotels and big cities.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So is that what you can expect to see, like, as you're driving along? Quite stunning.
Long stretch of coastline in the US that isn't completely developed with giant hotels and big cities. Next, I want to talk about the drive in and around Theodore Roosevelt National Park in western North Dakota. If you didn't know beforehand and you had to guess what state this was based on this footage, you might need about 40 guesses or so to get North Dakota. This is one of my favorite national parks in the country, and it's a great spot to get away from crowds. And you'll see a lot of wildlife here, a ton of bison, a lot of wild horses, big prairie dog towns, and just the general scenery of the North Dakota Badlands is beautiful. There are two different units to the national park, the North and South unit. Hardly anybody goes to the South unit, and even fewer go to the North unit. You can drive around each of the two units, and US Highway 85 connects them both. If you're driving through the North unit outside of the time between Memorial Day and Labor Day, there's a very good chance you won't see anybody else in the park except for maybe a park ranger.
Wow, no one else. So you'll literally be alone. Is there good cell service in the park? Because, I mean, if you're by yourself, and there's no cell service, if you get lost, but there'll probably be signs everywhere, 1 mile this way for the information center, that sort of thing.
There's really nowhere else in the US that has this type of scenery, and yes, it's in North Dakota. The next drive I want to talk about is in their neighbor to the south, South Dakota. When most people think of scenic beauty in South Dakota, they're going to think about Mount Rushmore and the Black Hills first, and that's both very nice. But what I wanted to talk about here is the drive between the town of Custer and Badlands National Park. Just east of the town of Custer, you get to Custer State Park. And this has got some nice scenery, but the best part about this drive is you're basically guaranteed to see a whole bunch of bison. They'll just be there chilling, roaming the streets, wishing people weren't there to bother them. But going a little bit farther east, you get to Badlands National Park, and this is where the scenery...
Those animals are massive. Like, how much do you think this, like a bison weighs? If I had to guess, it's got to be at least like 400 kilograms, like close to 1,000 pounds.
It's really gorgeous. The last time I was at this park, it was really cold, a bit too cold to be going hiking, but the drive is really nice going through the park, so you can see some really nice scenery and not even get out of your car. Heading way southeast is the drive across the Florida Keys.
Wow, it looks almost like you're driving across water here. I'm guessing there's a long-ass bridge.
I'm talking specifically here US Highway 1 between Key Largo and Key West. The whole drive between the two is almost like being on one big bridge. You go through all kinds of small islands, the Keys, and the whole time you're just seeing this beautiful turquoise water. There are several spots where you can stop and get out of your car along the way, and I remember I stopped at one and got out of the car and saw a couple of iguanas running around. I can see this road being kind of a pain in the butt and high traffic on busy holiday weekends, but it's all worth it when you get to the end at the Conch Republic.
Yeah, this is something I'd love to do, to be fair. That looks really beautiful.
In my opinion, the most beautiful stretch of drive along an interstate is Interstate 70 in the central part of Colorado. Between the towns of Eagle and Idaho Springs is the highest elevation of anywhere on a U.S. interstate. The highest point is Loveland Pass at just under 12,000 feet. To go over the pass, the interstate itself goes through a tunnel, but you can take a side exit and go on US Highway 6 to go over the actual pass. And with you being at almost 12,000 feet for a good chunk of the year, there's going to be a lot of snow on the mountains. So if you want to experience high altitude and thin air but not go on some crazy hike or on some weird back roads, you can do it on I-70 in central Colorado. Next up, arguably the most famous drive in the US, the Blue Ridge Parkway. This goes through a large...
I thought the most famous drive in the... I guess it's a combination of multiple drives would be Route 66. Because that is just one long route, isn't it?
Part of the Southern Appalachians in North Carolina and Virginia, and my favorite part of the drive is the stretch between Asheville and Boone. You go right near Mount Mitchell, which is the highest peak in the eastern U.S., and this is a very nice drive no matter what time of the year you do this. The most popular time is going to be the fall, especially October during the peak fall foliage season. But that's also when it's the busiest. So you can go in the spring or summer and it's still very nice, very green. And even during the winter with no leaves on the trees and a light dusting of snow, it is still very pretty. Next up is arguably the most...
That did look gorgeous. This would be really nice to drive across. It'd be hard for me because I'd be like wanting to keep my eyes on the road, but I'd be like...
No leaves on the trees and a light dusting of snow, it is still very pretty. Next up is arguably the most famous drive in the western U.S., and that's the Big Sur coastline in California. You've probably seen footage and images of this drive many times, and a lot of folks that are not familiar with California think this is much farther north in the state than it is. This is California Highway 1 between the towns of Carmel and San Simeon, which is where Hearst Castle is. And for most of this drive, you're along a big high cliff. There's all kinds of pull-offs. You can look over at some big drop-offs down to the ocean. And there's some serious wilderness between the coast and the valley on the other side of the mountains. And every few years, one of those bridges gets washed out and the road has to be closed. And the handful of people that live back there are basically cut off from society until the road gets repaired. Dang. So this is a drive where you'll definitely want to pull over at some of the turnouts to get your photos and some nice views as opposed to oohing and awing while you're driving. Next,
wow, man. So basically those towns rely on that bridge. So once that bridge goes down, like you said, every few years, like, wow, they really... So how does food get in? Like, how do they get food? Helicopter, I'm guessing?
Want to mention the north shore of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan along Lake Superior. Specifically, I'm talking about the stretch between the towns of Marquette and Grand Marais. You're hugging the lake shore for a big chunk of this drive. You can see Grand Island out in the lake as you go around it, and it goes right to Pictured Rock National Lakeshore, which is a really nice spot. You can't see the beautiful cliffs of Pictured Rock from the road, but you are not that far from it. But even if you don't go off the main road into the National Lakeshore, just staying on the road is a really nice drive. You'll go around some nice sand dunes and you'll end up in the really cute town of Grand Marais. Most of the UP of Michigan is very beautiful, very wooded, but especially this spot along the north shore of the Upper Peninsula is where you have some of the most beautiful views.
Yeah.
Next up is a nice drive around some mountain lakes in western Maine. I'm talking primarily about the areas around Rangeley Lake, Mount Blue State Park, and the Sandy River Valley. Part of this area is called the Carabasset Valley. I'm not sure if that's how it's pronounced, but just some nice wilderness
I think I've heard of, is it Calabasas or is that another place?
mountain lakes. Rangeley, or maybe it's Rangeley, I know is a very popular spot for people from Maine to go to in the summer, popular spot for people to have cabins. But even if you're just doing the loop drive in the area, you'll get some really fantastic scenery. And I'm pretty sure there are some characters from Stephen King novels buried out there. And in general, western /
Wow, this is beautiful. Look at all the different shades of the trees. Yeah, this is really, really pretty. It's like a screensaver.
northwestern Maine is where you're going to find some of the deepest wilderness in the eastern U.S. And now for what I think is the most beautiful drive in the U.S. It's the drive in southern Utah going through the national parks Zion, Bryce Canyon, and Capitol Reef. This is classic canyon country and a big part of the Grand Circle road trip tour that a lot of people do. The whole Grand Circle includes the 5 national parks of Utah as well as the Grand Canyon and other parts of northern Arizona, but I do think this particular stretch is the most beautiful. Driving through Bryce Canyon National Park requires going down a spur road into the park, but it's definitely
Wow. It's like being on Mars. Like, you could film like a space movie here. It wouldn't surprise me if The Martian, like some of the scenes were like filmed in somewhere like
worth it.
this.
And there's another spot called the Hogback, which is just this crazy ridge. It's a narrow road with a big steep drop off on both sides. I've driven over that part many times, and when I've been with other people, they always get kind of freaked out. Probably isn't the best time to have a tire blowout. You'll also go through Grand Staircase, Escalante National Monument, and a bunch of state parks as well. And the road goes right through Capitol Reef National Park, which is where you'll see some of the most colorful sandstone in the U.S. This drive is much longer than the other ones I talked about in the video, but it is definitely worth checking out the entire route. Although I do highly recommend stopping at least a few times along the way and probably want to make this a multi-day drive. So that's my overview of the 10 most scenic drives in the US. This is a huge country, it's a beautiful country, and the best way to see it is from the road. I made sure to include different drives from various parts of the country so that way everybody is fairly close to at least one of these. I hope you enjoyed this.
Awesome video. Yeah, I fully agree with him. Like, the US definitely has a lot of natural beauty to it. Like last year when I did that big trip to the US, a lot of the driving that we did between like LA and Vegas, but like in the national parks, getting to the national parks, a lot of the environment that we saw, like, you just don't really see the same sort of look in the UK, which is normal because I guess each country has fairly unique characteristics in terms of its appearance and stuff. You definitely see a lot more like larger stretches of flat land and then a lot more rugged scenery compared to here. Yeah, I definitely can't wait to get back and do a long sort of road trip. It's going to be so much fun. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoy my videos, please help me out by liking and subscribing.